The Jungian, daily. Lucia had been a night shift paramedic in Phoenix for 8 years, and she thought she'd seen every version of human crisis. Then came the call that made her question everything she thought she knew about herself. It was 2:47 a.m. when they got the overdose call. Another young guy, maybe 25, found unconscious in a Circle K parking lot. Standard Tuesday night stuff. But when Lucia knelt beside him in the ambulance, something shifted. His face, angular cheekbones, that particular way his hair fell across his forehead. It was like looking at her brother Miguel all over again. Miguel had been gone for 3 years now. Same age, same circumstances, same hollow look their mother got when the hospital called. Lucia had spent those 3 years building walls, perfecting the clinical detachment that let her save other people's brothers and sisters without falling apart. But this kid, Marcus, according to his ID, he kept mumbling about disappointing his family, about never being good enough. The exact words Miguel had said that last Christmas dinner, before everything went sideways. Lucia found herself gripping the stretcher rail so hard, her knuckles went white. Another selfish junkie, she caught herself thinking, then immediately felt sick. Where had that come from? She'd never thought that way about patients before. The harshness of it, the cruel dismissal. It sounded like their father's voice, the one that had driven Miguel out of the house in the first place. At the hospital, while Marcus was being stabilized, Lucia stepped outside into the desert air. The smell of creosote and dust usually calmed her, but tonight it just reminded her of that morning they found Miguel. She lit a cigarette with shaking hands, something she only did when the job got too heavy. The thing is, Lucia had always prided herself on being the compassionate one in her family. When Miguel started using, she was the one who researched treatment centers, who drove him to NA meetings, who never gave up hope. She was the helper, the fixer, the one who understood addiction as a disease, not a moral failing. But standing there in the parking lot, she realized she'd been carrying her father's voice this whole time, buried so deep she didn't even recognize it. Every time she looked at someone like Miguel, young, struggling, wasting their potential, part of her went cold and judgmental, the very attitude she'd fought against her whole career. It reminded her of those Russian nesting dolls her grandmother kept on the mantel. You think you know what's inside, but there's always another layer, another version of yourself you didn't expect to find. Sometimes that inner figure is someone you don't want to claim as your own. 2 weeks later, Marcus came by the station, clean, coherent, wanting to thank the crew. Lucia almost didn't recognize him. The hollow look was gone, replaced by something tentative but real. He'd started outpatient treatment, was staying with a cousin who didn't use. I remember what you said in the ambulance, he told her, about how it wasn't too late to choose differently. Lucia nodded, but inside she was confused. She didn't remember saying anything like that. In fact, she remembered thinking some pretty ugly thoughts. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the part of her that spoke to Marcus that night was fighting against the part that wanted to write him off. Driving home that morning, watching the sun come up over the Superstition Mountains, Lucia thought about patterns, how we inherit ways of seeing the world without realizing it, carry forward judgments that don't even feel like our own, how the hardest person to recognize sometimes is the one living inside your own reactions. She'd spent years defining herself as not her father, the understanding one, the advocate. But that cruel voice had been there all along, waiting for the right trigger to surface. The question wasn't how to get rid of it. It was how to recognize it early enough to choose which voice got to speak. That's the thing about working nights. Everything that's hidden during the day eventually comes to light.